Shalom u'bracha, everyone. As we are just days from ushering in the holiday of Nisan, that means that the holy Hag HaPesach, the holiday of Passover, is quite very shortly upon us. The excitement is in the air. The holiday of Pesach is nearly weeks away. And of course, that means that we are very close to engaging in that holy and exciting family night called Seder night, and highlighted, of course, by the reading of the Haggadah. Therefore, we've created a class series for you. This is the first of that series. I hope you'll enjoy these classes that come, all which will discuss and engage and analyze and talk about different segments of the Haggadah that we will recite on both nights of the Sedarim. Tonight we'll talk about what is really the opening page and the second paragraph of the Haggadah, and that is the NISHTANA, the famous NISHTANA song, series of questions. And of course, we always relate to the children. We're proud of them. They're reading wonderfully. Our tuition dollars are at work. It's cute. They sing it in tandem, solos, the 2-year-old, the 9-year-old. It's wonderful. And then sometimes, as tradition has it, the elders or the adults will chime in and sing it on their own. However, there are a couple of issues. The first one is that there's a feeling when children ask questions, which they've practiced to ask already, that there's something that is lacking authenticity. It's not completely genuine. You got to feel that when you ask a question, it's something that you're naturally, legitimately curious about. There's got to be some type of organic process which the questionnaire realizes something, makes an analysis, and then is curious enough or bothered enough to ask the question. Instead, we're practicing questions in school and prior to the Haggadah and robotically asking them on the night of the Seder night. To make things worse, we have the law that if there is not children present, then adults ask each other. If you're by yourself, you ask the 4 questions of NISHTANA to yourself. Seems counterintuitive. A, because you have no one to ask and no one to answer you. B, because you already know these questions all your entire life, and you know the answers to these questions. What I'd like to demonstrate in this brief class is that not only is the NISHTANA recitation foundational and fundamental to the entire night, it sets the tone of the Haggadah and is a critical aspect to the Leil Seder. In order to explain that, let's just preface by talking about one of the critical themes of Seder night. And that is something that we know in Hebrew as Hakarat HaTov, Hoda'ah, or appreciation. Appreciation is something that's fundamental to Judaism, especially when it comes to appreciating HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But we know that in order to appreciate, one has to experience some type of contrast. The night of the Seder, we're appreciating who we are, our identity as a people. The fact that HaKadosh Baruch Hu courted us because of the merits of our forefathers and commitment of their descendants. He chose us. He gave us the distinct privilege of being His chosen people, the people that carry out the Torah, the light to the world, the guide to mankind, the people that have the privilege of carrying out the objective of existence of the human race on earth, and will eventually merit the coming of Mashiach, the full redemption, to Hayat HaMetim, and the world to come. That's it. It's an incredible privilege. We're very, very lucky, and we express appreciation. But again, in order for one to express real appreciation, one has to have experienced something else. A person that's born into wealth does not appreciate his wealth as much. A person that has already natural talents does not appreciate as much as one who's honed and worked on those talents. A person that has natural high intelligence and therefore has academic success does not appreciate that success as much as a person who has really grinded it out and applied himself, was very conscientious, and was able to achieve unbelievable grades. The same is true with relationships. The same is true with business and sports, leisure, anything that we engage in life. If we can experience not having something and through our efforts acquiring that which we lacked, we appreciate it incredibly. Our health, someone who's healthy all his life, Baruch Hashem, cannot really appreciate his health as much as someone Bar Minan who experienced lack of health and then reacquired his health. So that's called contrast. So the NISHTANA comes along and really provides us a framework for contrast. The entire Haggadah, the meat of the Haggadah, the central focus, the text of analysis, which we spend most of the time on in the Haggadah, comes from a segment in Parashat Kitabo, the Mizvah Bikurim, when someone brings his first produce to the Beit HaMikdash, before someone can reap the benefit of his profits of the year, he has to approach the Beit HaMikdash, the Kohen, and make a proclamation of appreciation in which he recites where he came from, his humble beginnings, what HaKadosh Baruch Hu has granted him in terms of his land, his opportunity, his livelihood, and his success. That contrast provides for him that true appreciation. The NISHTANA prayer does just that for us, in which we have 2 questions and 2 answers. Of course, in our tradition, the first question is regarding the mitabelim, the fact that we dip twice as opposed to once, as was the culture at one point in time, followed by the question of hametz versus masa, the question of maror versus other vegetables, and of course, the replacement question in modern times of sitting in any position versus reclining. If you look, and this is the commentary of the Malbim, at those 2 sets of questions, you have an incredible contrast. You have the question regarding masa, that represented the lechem oni, the slavery, the servitude, the maror, the bitterness, the oppression, the suffering, the affliction that we experience in Mitzrayim, as opposed to contrasted on the other side is the questions of dipping, which both implies the sweetness of the haroset, which takes away the bitterness of the maror, but also affluence. The fact that you have everything that you need, the fact that you can have such a luxurious meal that you can afford to even dip things before the meal even begins, and of course reclining. The symbolism of being free of servitude, being free not just physically of slavery, but of the influences and the culture and the trends of the outside world, and having the emancipation and the freedom of abilities to serve God only. That's true freedom. That is an appreciation that we can only have when we reflect upon the humble beginnings, when we can understand that when Kadosh Baruch Hu saved us, He provided us salvation and redemption and extracted us from that horror of a nation of Egypt and that suffering, and brought us through His miraculous performance of miracles to redemption, to freedom, to luxury, and eventually to our land, as He's done over and over again throughout Jewish history, constantly b'chol dor vador, providing us salvation from difficulty and bringing us, as we experience now, thank God, times of comfort. And it's with that contrast, from dark to light, from discomfort to comfort, from poverty to affluence, from suffering to celebration, that we can set the tone of the night, of Seder night, and appreciate not just what we have, but where we came from, our humble and difficult beginnings, and then appreciate how far HaKadosh Baruch Hu has brought us in those days to acquire us as a nation, throughout the course of history, our very community, where we were and what we've become, and Be'ezrat Hashem, and the future and final step of the Jewish people, what we will be, with our land in full redemption, in the coming of Mashiach b'mehara b'yameinu, amen. I wish you a Hag, Pesach, Kasher, v'Sameach, Tishkul L'shim Rabot, Ne'imot v'Tobot. Enjoy your Seder night, starting with the NISHTANA.